The theme of our meeting this year is teamwork and multidisciplinary collaboration. And you'll see this theme throughout the scientific program. And I'm also going to address it today by looking at some famous teams and the lessons that we've learned from them. SEAL Team 6. SEAL is an acronym. It stands for Sea, Air, and Land. This is a Navy Special Fighting Unit. The SEALs are the Navy's elite, and Team 6 are the SEALs' elite. It's known that this is the only team that does not officially exist, at least not on paper. To become a SEAL requires extremely rigorous training. Many begin this training, and few complete it. There's preparatory school, basic underwater demolition, indoctrination, conditioning, scuba diving, land warfare, parachute training, and SEAL qualification. If you're able to successfully complete this 87 weeks of training, you get to this point of graduation, you join this elite group and receive your trident. And at that point, you're ready for deployment. Surgical resident training. Although this may not be immediately life-threatening, it does involve life and death, and it's also extremely rigorous, as most of you know. This involves years of medical school, internship, various years and levels of residency. And I've written this in terms of a neurosurgical resident, but this applies basically to any surgical specialty. Chief resident, many weeks of courses and meetings like this, and then often a year of fellowship. And if you complete this 640 weeks of training, which is sometimes in the order of 11 to 12 years, you get to this point of graduation, you get to join this elite group of attending surgeons and begin practice. If you believe in Gladwell's 10,000 hours to become an expert, these individuals are training for 25 and sometimes upward of 30,000 hours. Although these are very different disciplines, as you can see, there are some similarities, not just with the extensive and rigorous training, but in the way we learn from those that came before us. A lot of knowledge is passed down, as you'll see at a meeting like this. It also involves a great deal of exhaustion, as you can see below. What do we learn from these teams? They are both a testament to what human beings can accomplish when they're dedicated and trained properly. These are both very coherent units with many members that function as one team. The team members, as you can imagine, can regularly change. That's true of soldiers, that's true of our residents, that's true of our fellows. But the unity and the function of the team should not. And this requires very strong leadership. That's what most of you possess. Apollo 11 team. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart. This team took off from the top of this Saturn V rocket on July 16th, 1969 at around 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. 4 days later, they successfully landed on the surface of the moon, and 4 days later, they safely returned to Earth. On July 21st, 1969, at approximately 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Neil Armstrong became the first human being to set foot on the lunar surface. This momentous occasion was watched by over 600 million people worldwide. This was a 10-year effort for an approximately 8-day mission to spend just over 21 hours on the surface of the moon. The estimated cost at the time, over $25 billion. And today that would be almost $145 billion. The team included Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. This entire team was necessary for a successful mission. Michael Collins remained in the command and service module, while Armstrong and Aldrin piloted the lunar module down to the surface of the moon. Eventually, they returned to the service and command module and then safely back home. But was this the entire team? It turns out that these three astronauts actually made up only 0.0005% of the entire team. It took nearly 400,000 scientists, engineers, and technicians, both male and female, to reach the moon. These are some members of the team you may have never heard of. Bobby Johnson. She actually won the Miss USA pageant in 1964. When she was asked, what would you like to do for a career? They expected to hear, model or actress or that sort of thing. And she completely shocked the press when she said, I want to be a computer scientist. At that time, that was unheard of. She became an application engineer and eventually worked for General Electric. And she developed the fuel cells that helped for the Gemini and Apollo spacecraft. Judith Cohen is an aerospace engineer. She initially worked on the Atlas rocket in the early times of the program. She eventually developed the abort guidance system. It was this system that allowed the Apollo 13 to return safely to the Earth after it was damaged in the explosion. Margaret Hamilton, a computer scientist at MIT. She developed the Apollo onboard flight software that allowed them to land safely on the moon. Katherine Johnson, you may have heard of her. She's a mathematician. She worked for NASA for over 33 years, and she developed the mathematics for the orbital mechanics of spaceflight. So these are remarkable members of this team that you may have never heard of that played critical roles. So what do we learn from this team? We have extensive and sometimes unrecognized or even unappreciated team members that help us achieve success. Keep this in mind. We all work in the office, in the operating room, in the hospital, and there's a lot of people behind us. And remember that no man or woman stands alone. This is Fred Hayes. Fred was the lunar module pilot of Apollo 13. I met him some years back, at this meeting, in fact, and we had dinner together. And I was asking him one night, Fred, were you afraid? Were you scared when that explosion took place? And he very frankly said no. He said, we had thousands of individual scientists, engineers working for us. We just had to work as a team and do our job. He said, what's scary is try sitting alone in a fighter jet with an enemy on your tail trying to shoot and kill you. He said, now that's scary. And he was very pragmatic, very matter of fact, but a great person. So the Manhattan Project, this very controversial project, was a secret effort to build a nuclear bomb. It was driven to succeed before the Nazis could do the same thing. This clearly changed the course of history as we know it. The project ran from 1939 through 1946. It employed some 130,000 people to get this done. The cost of approximately $2 billion at the time, over $22 billion today. Los Alamos, New Mexico is the famous spot that everyone probably knows about. But there were thousands of individuals at other sites such as in Washington State, in Tennessee, that worked to get this project completed. It's just that the bombs were put together in Los Alamos and tested in that region. That's why we hear about it. These were top scientists from the US and Europe. And these scientists and individuals put aside their nationalities and their cultural differences for this program. They were joined by the common cause of creating this weapon in order to preserve humanity. Some famous names you might recognize, pictured below. These are people from very different cultures and walks of life that work together. These individuals even put aside gender, race differences in a time when sexual and color discrimination was the norm. Some members of this team, again, you may have not heard of. Leona Woods Marshall. She's a physicist and helped to build the first nuclear reactor in the world. Maria Geppert-Mayer worked on isotope separation for the project and later earned the Nobel Prize in 1963. So critical parts of this program. This international, multicultural, and multiracial team of both men and women worked seamlessly together. They ultimately won the war for the Allies, and they clearly changed the course of history. What we learn is that egos, nationalities, and genders can and should be put aside. Teamwork, part of our theme for this meeting. When you're building a team, be inclusive, be open-minded, and be gender and culture sensitive. There's great strength to be gained by diversity. After all, it's the backbone and the very foundation of our nation. It's been shown that the more diverse a team, and diverse in terms of age, ethnicity, gender, etc., the more productive, adaptive, and creative this team will be. When you face a new, uncertain, or complex situation, and that's pretty much true of all of us every day in our practice, I'm sure. And if your entire team agrees on the direction to go or what to do, I recommend you find someone that disagrees and listen to them carefully. You're likely to learn something. Abraham Lincoln said of a fellow congressman, "I don't like that man or his way of thinking. I must get to know him better." These are very profound words to live by, so be open-minded. There's nothing more valuable than a good team. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge and thank some of my teams. My home team. This is my family, my wife, my daughter Sophia, my daughter Vivian. I work extremely hard when I'm at the hospital and at work, and I play extremely hard with these guys. Every chance I get, we enjoy a lot of sports together, as you can see. My wife, Deb, is an attorney and an accomplished novelist. She's written about 12 novels and has more on the way. My oldest daughter, Sophia, studies neuroscience in St. Andrews in Scotland, and she's quite a ways away at school right now, so she couldn't be here. My youngest daughter, Vivian, is a track star. She's breaking all school records at her high school. She's an aspiring engineer, and she very much takes after her mother, who's also a 9-time All-American in collegiate track and field. Oh yeah, this is the 5th member of our family, my dog Scout. This is where I like to spend all my time when I'm free, up at our cabin in Vermont. That's his head peeking out of about 3 or 4 feet of snow. My office team. I can't get through a single day without this team. They virtually take care of everything for me outside of home and outside of the OR. And I'd like to thank my nurse Kathy and my Secretary Kim are here in the audience someplace. But thank you. I can't get through a day without you guys. The OR team, we've all got this team working behind us, right? There's loads of people that are pulling the weight so that we can focus on this one task. And I put this picture in for a particular reason. I was finishing a case one day and I'm working on the computer. And I turned around to say something to somebody in the OR, and it dawned on me that I was the only male in the room. If you look at this from anesthesia to our neurophysiologist, nursing, our residents, the entire room were female. It's a very proud day. My Jefferson Cranial-based team. This is truly a multidisciplinary collaborative effort and involves several specialists and several specialties. I'd like to point out my colleague, Mark Rosen. Mark and I have worked together for in the order of 16 years. Mark's been a great friend, a great colleague, and often like a big brother to me. I've learned everything I know about rhinology from Mark. I've basically done my 16-year fellowship with him. And Mark, I look forward to 16 more great years. I appreciate it. This is Mark wearing his favorite costume around the operating room. Can you imagine that I actually look up to this guy? This fit is very fitting for my team at Jefferson. Find a group of people who challenge and inspire you. Spend a lot of time with them, and it will change your life forever. Mark, Chris, Gersten, Mindy, you've been that group for me. So I appreciate working with you. I'm proud of all of you. We've formed our center. We've done a lot of academic pursuits together. It's been great work together. These guys are great colleagues and friends. Our group continues to grow. Our list of fellows continues to grow. And these are the men and women that most inspire me. We also have a lot of fun. This is also fitting. If you take the team out of teamwork, it's just work, and who wants that? Again, you see Mark Rosen at his finest, and the fellow next to him is yet to be identified. BSc Management. Many of you may or may not know this is the group that helps to manage our society. This group epitomizes teamwork and multidisciplinary collaboration. These are the people that work day in and day out for us all year long, basically to make us look good and to keep our society running. And I don't mean just for this meeting. This is in regard to investments, development, our journal, courses, contract negotiation, bylaws, our membership, fundraising, and basically listening to every crazy idea I've come up with this year and working through it with me and with us as a group. So I sincerely thank you and appreciate all your efforts. With that, I'd just like to conclude by saying it's been an honor and a true pleasure serving as the NASBS president this year, and I very much look forward to seeing our society continue to grow and to remain strong. Thank you very much.